Well, if you've been under a rock, yesterday there was a huge reveal for Guild Wars 2, and that's that the second expansion and first really full content deep expansion for the game was announced. It's called Path of Fire, and it's looking amazing. They did release a trailer alongside a ton of information about the X-Pack. You may have seen it already. I've talked about it a hell of a lot. But today I wanted to give you guys in video form a bit of an analysis of this trailer and pick out all the little things we can see will be happening in the expansion. Now, I've already done a video like this, and if you tuned in on the official post show, you may have seen me talking about this trailer already. But here I'm going to go super in-depth. We're going to really look at what we see, and we're going to combine that with our knowledge of the expansion otherwise too. So this will be a great video to teach you guys a bit about the features and the kind of stuff that we can see. So first, let's have a little bit of a look at the trailer and see what comes up.
Commander, there's something I have to tell you. I went into the mists after my sword, but I found something else.
Refugees are pouring in from Alona.
If he kills an Elder Dragon, Tyria will never recover.
They cannot stand in the glory of Balthazar's light.
I will right this wrong.
Can't believe one of the gods gave up on us.
They cannot escape my wrath. When I am done, I will be the only god.
Oh man, and there is a huge amount to get to for this trailer. It really sets up some of the core ideas of this expansion. There's lots of really great voiceover in here and story details to pick out, but also crazy feature stuff like mounts, for example. So we'll take it bit by bit and just see where it leads us. So the trailer opens up obviously with this new ArenaNet logo. They're using this kind of purple mist dust effect, which I think is really nice. Obviously this is an expansion that's taking place in a desert, and it's a nice little visual theme they go with. So the early shot, we get a little bit of voiceover, and we're hearing from one of the main characters of the franchise, a character called Locke Brimstone. This is a character who has a big mystery about them, a mystery that was set up many years ago now, and we thought would be answered in the previous expansion, Heart of Thorns, but never was. So there's been this huge tease for the player base. What happened to Locke Brimstone when he went to the mist? We've all wanted to know that for so long. Every time the character has been approached about it in any story patch through the recent expansion, he's just sort of dismissed us out of hand, and he's not given us those answers. So they open the Path of Fire expansion trailer with the suggestion that he finally will give us this answer. He will finally talk to us about what happened to him in the mist. He says explicitly this. He says, "Commander, there's something I have to tell you. I went into the mist. I was looking for my sword," which we all knew, and he says, "but I found something else, ... So we still don't quite know what it is, but what we're looking at here, where I freeze this frame, this is an in-game cutscene, as it would seem. You'll notice it's very painterly looking, these chains, these things in the background. This entire cutscene, this entire part of the trailer, what this actually is one of those kind of very painterly cutscenes we used to see a lot of in 2012. This is the kind of cutscene that plays when you create a new character, or when that would play sometimes in dungeon storylines and so forth, right? So I really like that they've done this. Obviously, back in 2012, we had an Ascon Catacombs cutscene featuring Locke, this one, and it looks like in the new expansion, we're going to get a similar one too. Here he is himself in the background. What could lead the character to finally divulging this information, I'm not entirely sure, and we can speculate at maybe what happened to him in the mists. As for the character himself, you'll notice he's wearing his Herald armor. This is actually what came out with Heart of Thorns, but he doesn't have his blindfold on. So that's very curious. Now, there's going to be a demo people can play of the expansion very soon. I've already played it, and in the tiny bit of story at the start of the demo, this is not big spoilers, Locke does appear to you. He doesn't give us his story, he doesn't say what happens in the mist at the very start of this demo, but we do refer to the fact that he's no longer blindfolded. He says that it was just a distraction and he wants to, you know, take it off to clear his mind.
What happened to your blindfold?
A temporary measure to help me focus. But I got used to the voices in my head, so I tossed it.
Interesting stuff. Something has happened to him between the end of the Living World season and as we go into the expansion here, and he's now no longer wearing his blindfold. So that's fun stuff. And yeah, I think that's a cool thing for them to have started the trailer with, because so many of us have wanted to know what's going on with Locke. Let's move on, because I know some of you guys want to get to, you know, more tangible stuff about the expansion. So we come straight to this shot. This is the next part of the trailer. This is very interesting as well, because we just had the audio. I went into the mist, I was looking for my sword, but I found something else, and then we cut now to actual gameplay. So the suggestion there maybe on the trailer is, are we looking at the Crystal Desert, which is the open world new areas, or are we looking at a place that's not on the physical world of Tyria? Maybe we're looking at the mists, this metaphysical reality that Locke had been to. What are we looking at here? Because it is all very surreal looking landscape. And really the first 3 or 4 shots of this trailer, you're going to be asking that same question. Is this real? Is it the Crystal Desert and Alona and the locations of the new expansion? Or is it some kind of visual representation of the Mist and Locke's story? We just don't know. I will point out though, here we've got obviously a disintegrated floating pyramid on the right. At the end of the most recent Living World season, we saw a very interesting cutscene showing this happening to pyramids, because Balthazar, the fallen god, was destroying all of this stuff. So maybe it is the real world. And on the left as well, we got this too. And this is a little bit of the brand, it would seem. This is a bit of Kraukatoric's magic. So this, I think, is a really great shot for the expansion to kind of open with, because it tells the story that this expansion is set up for. This is a conflict between a god and an Elder Dragon. And I love that. I love that so much. Guild Wars 2 got really kind of formulaic, and it was in a scary place for me for a while, because Elder Dragons are kind of cool things to fight, but the idea that we do an expansion and kill a dragon, and then an expansion and kill a dragon, and then an expansion for like 6 expansions in a row, that's going to bore people, right? Well, we're only on X-Pac 2, and they've twisted it immediately. Entirely, for the past 5 years, this MMO has been about fighting Elder Dragons, and this expansion has turned that on its head. In a weird way, we're defending an Elder Dragon. An Elder Dragon that's indifferent to our existence and will fight us if it gets the opportunity. So you've got the forces of the Elder Dragon on the left, and you've got the forces of the god, or the destruction caused by the god, presumably, on the right. And I think that's beautiful. That's such a cool story. And as an added twist to it as well, and the trailer doesn't hint at this very much, you've got these 2 big factions for Path of Fire, and there is a third faction, a sneaky third faction. That is Palawa Joko and the Undead, the people who were in this desert before Balthazar, and perhaps before Kraukatoric, depending on your perspective. They're also going to be featuring. What their role to play is incredibly exciting and curious to me, and they're hinted at in such a small way in this trailer, which we will come to very soon. So yeah, that's the next shot. This one, again, there's that kind of that question, are we still looking at the mists because of the voiceover, or is this the real world now? I find this a really striking shot as well, because the previous expansion, Heart of Thorns, was all about vertical maps. Lots of height, lots of gliding, bouncing mushrooms to go up and down. You know, it was all about verticality. They made big maps, but they weren't like wide maps. They were deep maps. And this new expansion is kind of the reverse of that. It's like, okay, we had a really dense jungle. Now let's have really open, massive, explorable, open world plains in a desert. Let's not look at the vertical world. Let's look at the horizontal world in the next expansion. And, you know, the new maps that they've confirmed are enormous. The size of this expansion is, at release, in 5 maps, going to be equivalent to all of the Heart of Thorns maps, plus the 6 following Living World maps, all at once. And that's crazy. And so that's all very exciting, and, you know, mounts and running across these vast plains. And then immediately we get this shot, which sort of stands in defiance of all of that. There's a lot of verticality here. This is the new expansion, and there's still a lot of verticality. We're looking at some kind of submerged fire keep deep down in the depths. It reminds me a lot of the desert Borderlands in World vs. World. Who built this place? Is it forgotten architecture? Is it something else? One of the many civilizations that has arrived at the Crystal Desert before, only to fall? I guess only time will tell. And you get a hint at the surface up there. It's like Tangled Depths from Heart of Thorns. It's beautiful, guys. I really like this shot. We never really saw much lava in the Crystal Desert in GW1 either, so that's curious. Again, shot number 3, still that question, are we looking at the mists or are we looking at the real world? This could be the real world, but if it is the real world, this is a place that Balthazar has come to and fortified out the ass. This guy has completely transformed this into a hellish, barren landscape filled with fire, quite apparently. Now, this was the first time I saw this trailer, a shot that was incredibly interesting to me, because I thought it was hinting at a very deep aspect of the lore, which I now know not to be true. So, a little backstory here. When the Heart of Thorns trailer came out, we had this shot here. You guys remember this? This weird-looking floating creature. And a lot of us at the time thought that that could be a Masat, a Guild Wars 2 Masat. And the Guild Wars 2 Masat did end up making an appearance, but we were all wrong to say that, because it actually turned out to be an Exalted. And at the time of that trailer releasing with Heart of Thorns, there was a very small amount of people in the community who were saying, no, I don't think it's a Masat, and everybody shut them down, but those people were right. So that happened with Heart of Thorns. Now let's fast forward. We're at Path of Fire. We've got this shot. And once again, we have a mysterious set of creatures on screen. Once again, floaty creatures. And these guys have got like a purple energy about them. Isn't this exciting, guys? These, I originally thought these guys might be Marganites. So anyone not that familiar with the lore, okay, the Crystal Desert, which is where Path of Fire is set, had once upon a time a civilization of Abaddon worshippers, humans, that sailed the Crystal Sea. This was before it was even a desert. They would sail from island to island. They were a lot like Corsairs. They were a lot perhaps even like Luxons. These were seafaring people that worshipped Abaddon as their god above all. And Abaddon eventually made the decision, yeah, I'll give my followers, my most devoted, the Marganites, I will give the Marganites magic. And he gave them all magic and they became very powerful. And the other gods didn't like this. So Abaddon got in a huge war with the other gods. It was Abaddon plus his Marganites versus all the other gods, and Abaddon and his Marganites lost. Abaddon was cast down. The Crystal Desert, the Crystal Ocean at the time, sorry, the Crystal Sea dried up. It became a desert, and all of the Marganites vanished into the mist, imprisoned alongside Abaddon. And when all the water dried up, you had these beautiful shipwrecks just stranded in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere. It was gorgeous. It was surreal. It was so interesting, right? So we now, in 2017, are going back to that region of the world. We're going back to the region of the world where the Marganites once lived. And so then, wouldn't it make sense if the Marganites were in this expansion? What a great idea that would be! And then on the third shot of the trailer, if we do this frame by frame, they show us these sneaky little characters down here that look a lot like Abaddon's Marganites after they'd been infused with magic and they had all kind of this purple energy, almost branded style energy. There could be some theories there about them. I was so happy and excited about this, but unfortunately, it's probably not true. We've actually seen from the demo and from playing the game, this is just Balthazar creatures. Some of the Balthazar creatures look vaguely purpley. These are forged. That's the technical name for these new entities. And some of the forged do look very Marganite-y, but they are ultimately just followers of Balthazar. And maybe none of that story is relevant in the end. And the rest of the shot is quite clearly, you know, this is a Balthazar outpost with lots of obsidian structures and things around it. What a shame, but there you go, guys. We managed to head it off. They're just Balthazar creatures. The Forged, by the way, are a new faction, and there's lots of new lore about them and stuff, so we could get some interesting stories there nonetheless. Moving on, we got another shot, and this is the last time where I'm really going to be questioning, are we in the Crystal Desert or are we in the Mists? So this expansion is very much about the god Balthazar. Balthazar's realm in the Mists, a place called the Fissure of Woe, was actually a place we could visit in Guild Wars 1. It was an eternal battlefield filled with fire where Balthazar was fighting his half-brother Menges, or Menzies, depending on how you want to say his name. And, you know, this shot actually looks a lot like the Fissure of Woe to me. This looks like one of the eternal battlefields where you could visit in the first game. If we're having an expansion Path of Fire featuring Balthazar, does it not make sense we may be able to go to the Fissure of Woe at the same time? So this is either the Fissure of Woe, or, again, it's just a desert map. My inkling is maybe to be a bit more pessimistic and just suggest, hey, this is probably a desert map. Though it does look like a barren, hellish, fiery landscape, I will say that much. So then we get this shot. I think very much now at this point, we're not in the mist. We even transitioned through a black screen, so definitely I think this is just showing expansion areas. This is a new place. Any long-time fans of Guild Wars 2 who have been playing right through the Season 1 days, and that was a long time ago now, back in 2013. If you were a player in 2013, you might be excited at the look of this. You might recognize this. This looks a lot like a map that was in the game for only a brief period of time called the Labyrinthine Cliffs. It was a map we could only visit during Living World Season 1, where the story was that there were a group of people called the Zephyrites. They flew about in the sky and landed periodically at different areas of Tyria to trade their various wares. The Zephyrites then got shot down out of the sky, and their storyline's sort of been on hold. Well, one part of the Zephyrites' history is that they visited the Crystal Desert, the same place this expansion is taking us to. They visited the Crystal Desert, and they recovered aspects and power from their kind of master. They're the descendants of the Brotherhood of the Dragon, Glint. So Glint they went to Glint's body in the Crystal Desert and recovered aspects of her. We actually had a short story on the website. There should be a link in the description if you guys want to check it out. The Trek of the Zephyrites, where we get to hear about their experiences in the Crystal Desert. And so now in 2017, we the players are going to the Crystal Desert. Would it not make sense that we see leftovers from when the Zephyrites were there? And that's exactly what this looks like. This looks so much like Zephyrite architecture and what we saw at the Labyrinthine Cliffs in Living World Season 1. I think that makes perfect sense that we may get to see where they touched down and maybe where they made camp, where they were hanging out for a little while when they were recovering stuff from Glint's body. All of that said, if you do go back and read the short story, The Trek of the Zephyrites, where we hear about them in the desert, it doesn't suggest that they really had any major fortifications or places, and this looks like a hell of a lot of stuff was going on. But yeah, this just screams Zephyrites to me. I'm curious what you guys think. And so then we finally start to see some new architecture. We get to see some guys running away. This is clearly an open world shot here. This is clearly the Crystal Desert. I'll point out in the top left over here, we actually have a capture thing. So what I think this is probably open world. And this is some kind of dynamic event where this outpost with Elonan refugees in it is being attacked by Balthazar's people, the Forge. And I think we're going to get a lot of shots in this trailer revolving around that kind of sub-story, just the idea of the Forged attacking a lot of people's outposts in the desert. We get this beautiful, like, textured, marbled, like, blue or sapphire-looking bridge here. Reminds me an awful lot of what we saw of some of these more exotic locations back in Guild Wars 1. And yeah, we get a bunch of Elonans as well. These guys are wearing different outfits, different clothes. They all look very interesting. The devs actually, when they announced the expansion yesterday, they put a patch out into Guild Wars 2, which added a ton of new hairstyles and things so you can make your characters look Elonan. I think I might take them up on that. That's very cool. And if you buy, like, the pricier versions of the expansion, you get a free total makeover kit, so you can make your character, you can turn from a little white girl into a big strong black man who's going to charge around in the desert. It's going to be great, guys. In the voiceover right now, they do say that refugees are pouring in from Elona. So if you guys don't know, Elona is a region that currently, in Guild Wars 2 of today, if you look at your world map, it's a region so far away you can't even see it on the world map. And when the expansion comes out, they're going to expand the world map much further south so that you can see Elona. These are people from there, a desert, arid region, way down to the south, and there are refugees apparently who are coming north. Why are they coming north? Well, probably because of Balthazar coming to the Crystal Desert, probably because of Kraukatoric, and probably most likely more than anything else, they are fleeing the armies and the dominion of the Undead, led by Palawa Joko, who we haven't heard very much about for a long time now, and I'm really excited to give you guys more details on as time goes by. But great shot, and we get to see lots of Elonans running away here. Here we see the Forge, so I've already talked a bit about them, so we won't stay on this shot for too long. But yeah, this is a new variety of enemy. This is a new faction. They are followers of Balthazar's. They, interestingly, have just been manufactured for this expansion. We've never heard about them before. But Balthazar in the first game did have armies. His army, though, were known as the Eternals. They were kind of crappy, tacky-looking, just ghost characters, essentially. So there is a question there in the lore. Why does Balthazar now have a new army known as the Forged, rather than, you know, just these ghostly apparitions? I think the answer from a game development standpoint is obvious. It's that these guys look way cooler. And it's that if you give an entirely new faction like this, the expansion feels a lot more fresh and a lot more new. One of the things that actually really struck me in my playthroughs about the expansion is that when we went into Heart of Thorns, we were fighting more Mordrum, who we were already more than familiar with because of Living World Season 2. This time, we've got an entirely new faction with new types of abilities, new animations, new models, all at once, and it really does feel very fresh. So from a development perspective, I get why they've invented the Forged, but what are they going to do for the lore? Why are some of these Forged purple and look vaguely like Marganites? What is their motivation? What do they do? And particularly, we find some big boss Forged characters as well, which will feature a lot in the trailer, and we'll talk more about that soon. Next shot here. There's not much to say on this one. It's big, it's burning, there's fire, Balthazar bad, we get it. The bones in the foreground obviously are just to make you feel ominous, but funnily enough, these could be bones of some ancient creatures, essentially Guild Wars' version of dinosaurs. In Guild Wars 2, dinosaurs still kind of exist, raptors and all sorts of things like that. They still exist. So when we think about like old extinct giant beasts of the past in Guild Wars, what we're thinking about are the Giganticus lupicus. And we got a little bit of exposition on them in 2012 in Ara. If you played that dungeon, the explorable modes of that dungeon, we got to meet one variety of Giganticus lupicus, and we got a tiny bit about them. But, you know, their bones are strewn all around the world, and particularly in the first game, you saw lots of these bones in the Crystal Desert. So maybe is that what we're looking at again here? I'd love more lore on that. I could take it or leave it if they decide not to, though. But yeah, that's this shot. Not much to say there. So finally, we get a shot that's not really about story or anything. It's just a gameplay feature. Yeah, mounts. This is probably when most people sat up and were like, wow, okay, there's something new happening. This is Path of Fire's mastery stuff. So the devs looked at gliding and they said, gliding was cool. Let's just go crazy with it. Every mastery in the expansion is a new mount. The mounts you can train through the mastery system to be better at their jobs of leaping and climbing and teleporting and gliding over water and sand. They are gorgeous. They are really fun to play. They've clearly had a lot of love put into them. You'll notice, for example, like their footprints in the desert are really cool looking. All the little details you'd expect from mounts are there. The only disappointment for me is that you can't use emotes from their back. Like, you can't wave at people from mount back. You can't tell your mount to sit down while you're riding it. That's a real shame to me. But they do have idle animations, and there's a lot of love. There's a lot of really awesome sound effects. If you guys have seen any of my demo playthroughs so far, and when you get to the demo yourself, you will see what I mean. It is great. I haven't felt this good riding something since riding aggro in Shadow of the Colossus. Brilliant stuff. Also, if you check out in the background here, we got a couple of new enemies again. A lot like I was talking about the Forge. There's just loads of new stuff that they've managed to throw in here. That is a sand eel, and we also have a sand shark back there too. New enemies that we'll see swimming around that we can fight in the sands. Here's another mount. So we're fully into the mount section. This is the Skimmer. I do not believe that this will be available in the upcoming demo, but the expansion itself, it will be available. This guy can fly over surfaces, so it's funny, Heart of Thorns has sort of marked a time where the devs are moving a bit more away from underwater combat because it's not everyone's cup of tea. Well, in this expansion, you seem to just be able to skip water altogether if you want to. You just glide across these surfaces, and unfortunately it doesn't appear in this trailer, but the devs did release more information about mounts I'll get to soon, where you can really see how this thing works around like jumping puzzles and moving over quicksand and other environments. This guy looks amazing, and we're going to see a cool animation in a second too. The water, it looks really beautiful in this expansion as well. I don't know if they've done some changes to the engine. There's a curious thing here. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Is it coral? Is it a crab of some kind? And also more bones under the water as well, in case you guys missed that. Gorgeous shot though. Another mount. This is the third variety. This guy, I can't remember what this guy's called. I guess we'll have to look into that later. He's a high jumper. In terms of like lore, it's a new creature. It's like a kangaroo bunny thing, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to geek out about this. What I was quite struck by with this area of the trailer is, first of all, this section up here, which I wonder if that's a teleportation platform place, which would be returning from Guild Wars 1. And also, you'll notice the draw distance. The draw distance for expansion maps is increased. And you can see really far away. That's how enormous these maps are. They're so big that they realized they sort of needed to push the draw distance up. I think, generally speaking, if your system can play Heart of Thorns maps, it will be able to play these ones just fine. Also, some little enemies in the background under the tail there. So here we get, of course, we're in an MMO and there's group play. This is fascinating to me. It really is. So we see some kind of squad. There's about 7 players here. Every mount is shown. So you've got the Raptor, which is the first one. You've got the Jumper. You've got the Skimmer. And then here as well, there is another mount. This guy has teleportation, and this is the only time it will feature in the official trailer. Though I'll have more footage and fun things to talk to you guys about with that coming up very shortly. But yeah, this is group content on Mountback. I will just remind you guys, raids are going to be a part of this expansion. Now, Heart of Thorns raids included gliding in their mechanics, ley lines, all that kind of stuff. You might want to consider that Path of Fire group content, raids and stuff, can have mount moments. Do you remember one of the Heart of Thorns encounters where you're running away from the spirit wall? Yeah, they can do another version of that, except it's in a group of 10 people charging away or into battle on Mountback. That's going to be insane. Really looking forward to what they do there. So here we get another forged character. This is like a forged boss. So the voiceover around this point in the trailer, we actually are hearing from a boss of the Forged. And you know, I mentioned just a second ago, who are these people in terms of lore? It's quite curious because they do talk to you and they seem sentient. I think in the trailer we hear one of them saying, "I stand in the glory of Balthazar's light." What motivates these characters? Why do they do what they do? Are they akin to the Risen blindly following Zaitan? Or is there something more there? Are they like the Exalted in that there's souls sort of buried inside this armor somehow? We shall see. And what is their relationship to the Eternals? I don't know. But they look gorgeous, and the details are fascinating. So here is a female Forge. This is actually the character, I think, that's speaking in the voiceover. And one of the first bosses of the demo. She's got this big-ass hammer. She runs around. You'll notice someone's dead here. The tone of the expansion is quite dark immediately. This character, this member of the Forge, just goes around slaughtering NPCs at the start of the story. And this is one down here. Don't worry, guys. That's not crazy spoilery. But yeah, we can see that she's using big hammer animation here to attack this outpost. And like I said, a lot of this trailer is sort of that idea. Here's an incredible shot in the trailer, one of my favorites. Longtime watchers of mine will know I have been a longtime fan of seeing the Hydra in Guild Wars 2. So again, this story has roots in the first game. In the first game, in the regions of Ascalon, in the regions of the Fire Island Chain, and the regions of the Crystal Desert, and a few other places too, there were Hydra. Big reptile-looking characters, 3 heads, would cast meteors on you and all kinds of crazy fire magic. Really awesome enemies. And they never appeared in Guild Wars 2. For all these years, they've not been in Guild Wars 2. We've been able to revisit the Fire Island Chain. We've been able to revisit Ascalon. Where are the Hydras, I have wondered? Well, they are in the expansion. This is a Hydra, and not only do we see this regular Hydra here, and they've got amazing tech on them. You can cut their heads off as you fight them, and their heads wriggle around on the ground. Not only is there a Hydra here, but we will see another version of a Hydra as well later in the trailer. It's very exciting. Really geeked out on that. Here we see another member of the Forged. Really crazy snake-like animations, like dancing animations. Really, really love this guy. And of course, we see some hints of the Elder Dragon Kraukatoric in the background. Look at the focus here, guys. Remember, I said there's 3 factions. Kraukatoric doesn't appear at all. Very few branded appear at all. There's just subtle hints of Kraukatoric being a part of this one. And I really like that. I like the mystery that they're setting up there. And the Undead still haven't even been hinted at in this trailer. What do you think about that? So yeah, anyway, this guy's casting some kind of big attack. Here we get an outpost that appears to have fallen to the Forged. More of these kind of obsidian walls, fires. As the shot goes along, you'll notice various Forged NPCs. There's this Forged sniper up here manning the wall, and there's going to be lots sort of walking around on the inside there. And more of just the regular desert and sort of a nice little oasis with lots of palm trees there off in the distance. I think, by the way, what we're going to be seeing in this trailer, what we have been seeing in this trailer, is all going to be very early game content. You know, there's 5 massive maps. I wouldn't be surprised if this trailer entirely uses environs from the first of those maps. And that would be very similar to what they did with Heart of Thorns as well, remember, where it was mostly Verdant Brink and some slight stuff in the second map. They're probably not going to, in the release trailer, spoil some of the deeper areas and more exciting places we'll be able to go to. So here we see 2 things, actually. It can be really subtle. I've actually paused at a great time here. There actually appears to be a Revenant in a fight here. I don't know if that's Ritlock. I think it is, actually, because I think that's a Hotham we can see there. I think what we're watching is Ritlock fighting a member of the Forged. But this member of the Forged is ludicrous looking. I mean, we've got crazy animations and fire and stuff. And if we dig through it just perfectly, look at that NPC. Can you see that guy? Well, we have to rewind slightly. Look at that NPC. This is insane. He's got cannons on his shoulders, cannons for hands. We'll see another shot of him later. I don't know if this is some kind of big boss, an open world boss or something, but absolutely mental, and he's huge as well, right? That's Ritlock down there, the little old Ritlock. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And we just see the immense destruction they're going for, and we just get to see all the quality they've got to put into this because they've had 2 full years of dedicated effort developing it. So here we've got some kind of forged siege here, which is interesting because we'll see some siege from another of the factions in a moment. But here's some forged siege. Looks almost like a devourer, actually, funnily enough. Remember that it's going to basically treb this this outpost here. Again, I think that this is just more of the same kind of events. Here we get Kazmir. I actually don't like this shot in the trailer, really. I'm not too much a fan of the animation work that they do on these little moments. But we do at least get some really gorgeous depictions of some of the fairer areas of the expansion that aren't going to be all chaos and craziness. I actually think this is the Amnoon Oasis. We can't pick out too much crazy detail because of the blur that they've got there, the depth blur, but it looks gorgeous. Here we see a little bit of new tech. This happens right at the start of the expansion, right at the start of the demo. These pyramids are being sieged by Balthazar's Forged, and they've got all this rubble and things that are falling down beautifully and gracefully. When you actually see this in game, guys, you will be gliding in on an airship as everything's crumbling around you right at the start of the expansion. They really hit out of the park very early. In previous Guild Wars 2 products, you haven't seen immense and epic moments like this until really deep in the story, and they're really hitting you hard. They're punching you in the face with it on this one, and it's great. We see a little bit more beautiful water there. So here we got a cowering guy as flames close in around him, looking off. So we're going to get a shot and then a reverse shot. This is a member of the Forge that's attacking him. Not too much to pick at. And finally, we get this shot. Oh, and it was hard to pause here. This exists for about a 20th of a second in the trailer, guys. Such a brief little window in the trailer, but it's really exciting. Finally, right near the end, we see something new. It's not the Forged. It's not stuff to do with Kraukatoric. It's Faction 3. It's the Undead. So these guys are called the Awakened. They are not Zaitan's Risen. The Living World ended by talking about the Risen and setting up a contrast here. The Risen that followed Zaitan were mindless creatures. They were thralls. I believe that the Awakened, which is this form of undead that belonged to Pulawa Joko's armies, these guys, at least as far as we saw them in Guild Wars 1, they had much more personality. They were sentient, they had ambitions and thoughts, and they were kind of like a real army, all right? These guys have conquered Alona. They've been oppressing the living in Alona for a long time now. And they're mixed up in this conflict because this is the region of the world that they're in. How will they take to Balthazar's attack on Kraukatoric? It's going to be fantastic. So really, really beautiful setting and a great mix of things going on in the world building here. And yeah, just as we saw some Forged Siege, we've now got some Undead Siege. This is an Undead Catapult, not a Trebuchet because it doesn't have a counterweight, as I've been informed on Twitter. And yeah, we've even got a little member of the army down here, and he doesn't look like the Risen. He's clearly undead, but he's a different style of undead. And again, they're sieging an area up here. I think these are like the teleportation places from Guild Wars 1. I really do. In the first game, you could teleport and zap around the Crystal Desert very quickly, and we might be looking at that. Here, more siege. So we saw siege from the Forge, we saw siege from the Undead, and lastly on the trailer, we're seeing siege from the Branded. And this is actually the first time we've seen Kraukatoric's armies. We got a regular Devourer here and a giant siege Devourer here in some kind of Twilight setting. This is the Brand, and these guys don't get much of a look in on the trailer either. They definitely focus on Balthazar a lot. More stuff with mounts. There's not really much more to say except that we're in a new environment. Same characters charging along what we saw earlier. A little bit more Forged, and it kind of winds down now at the end of the trailer to just lots of quick, snappy shots as the music crescendos. But we get some really interesting voiceover about this point. We hear from Balthazar. And Balthazar says two things. He says, "I will right this wrong," and he also says something fascinating. He says, "I will be the only god." So that's crazy. One of the big things in the story right now is we don't quite know why Balthazar's doing what he's doing. We don't know quite why he hid as Lazarus, and we don't quite get what his whole beef is. And the expansion is going to explore those things. There have been potential theories that maybe something's going on with the other gods that he knows about, and he's trying to save them, and he's being a good guy, really. He does have noble intentions, as he's explained before. But in this trailer, we get a bit of a progression there. He says, "I will be the only god." He lays down on the line that, A, the other gods are still in the picture, and he kind of wants to destroy them. Perhaps. I am very curious what your interpretation of that line is, guys, but that's pretty huge for the trailer, and it's something we get as a pretty big bomb right at the end here. Visually speaking, I think this shot here is one of the most gorgeous shots in the entire thing, if not the most gorgeous one. I love the lighting. I love the composition of everything we're seeing here. I love the Alolan boats, by the way, and this is actually another shot of the Skimmer. So this is the Skimmer Mount, and this is one of the abilities that they can use, and you'll watch it glides and rockets towards the screen here in front of us. Really, really amazing stuff. Absolutely beautiful. Here we get the big bad guy himself. This is Balthazar. Emphasis on his greatsword floating alongside him. So that's quite curious. It's going to pan around in front of him, but just before we get to his face, it's going to cut. And it's going to cut to what could quite possibly be the biggest lore bomb of the entire trailer. You guys ready? And it's this thing. It's this guy. So what is this guy, everyone? This is about when the trailer says, I will be the only god. And we have a fiery creature that clearly isn't like a forged. It's got a skull on its shoulder. It's not Balthazar, but it looks a lot like Balthazar. It's got a different weapon. And it has no head. Apparently it looks a lot like a Bloodborne boss. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But it has no head. So one thing we do know about Balthazar, and one thing we do know in his story, is that Balthazar probably, and they've at least hinted at it a little bit, might have cut the head off of his brother that he had been in a perpetual war with. That there's some big betrayal that's happened in Balthazar's story, and he may have decapitated his half-brother, Menzies, who may or may not have godlike power. They've never been quite explicit. So if we're having an expansion where they're diving into Balthazar, they will probably tell us more about his half-brother. And I'm wondering if we're seeing something that looked, and Menzies, by the way, had a shadow army, had like an undead army, right? Undead. And now here, what do we have? A vaguely undead, a skull on his shoulder, character that looks like Balthazar but isn't Balthazar, and has no head. Is this Menzies, guys? Is this Menzies? Oh, that would be crazy if it's Menzies. I think this could be really huge. I've also heard someone say that this could actually have something to do with the Flame Legion of the Char. And that might seem like really odd, but this expansion, if you think of Heart of Thorns was kind of a Sylvari-based expansion. This expansion is kind of, if we're going to tie it to races, it would be a human expansion, surely. But also, we're dealing with Brand, and we're dealing with Kraukatoric, and that's kind of Char territory. So we might be seeing a bit of a duality here. I'm a big believer that they should just tell these stories organically and not pin everything to one race each time. But that Brand is kind of an interesting in. We've seen that one of the elite specializations actually channels a Char hero as its legend. The Char might have more of a look in on this story than you expect, and if that's true, they might progress the Flame Legion story, which was left in a really bad place, in my opinion, at the end of Core Guild Wars 2. So if this isn't Menzies, I do subscribe somewhat to the ideas that this could have something to do with the Flame Legion and what they've been up to. Maybe you guys will have some further thoughts on that. But crazy shot, and again, a very short one. You've really got to pause and look very closely for this. So there's very little undead in this trailer. We get the tiny little bit of the undead catapult. Here we get to see a little bit more of the awakened. This is some kind of awakened thrall, scary red eyes, tar, weird, interesting attacks there. We go back to the siege. This guy's actually charging up a big animation. This ball is going to slowly move to the right of the screen. I actually think what's happening here is this is a world boss, and the way that that ball moves, it makes me think it's some kind of like dodgeable animation or tell. I don't think they'll have raid bosses or anything in this trailer, but we'll see. I get a little bit more of the Forge running at the camera. Another quick shot of the Awakened as he roars. The music's building and building and building. We're going to get a lot of fast, snappy shots here. We get the same Forge character, the woman with the hammer. We get a crazy cool shot here, and this is really the last big thing from the whole thing, guys. We get more of the branded, but check it out, it's a branded Hydra. If adding Hydra wasn't cool enough, if adding tech where you can cut the Hydra's heads off as you attack them wasn't enough, they also decided to take one of the most badass, interesting creatures from this region of the world, and they made it dragon corrupted. This is a branded Hydra, guys. Incredible stuff. I'm really looking forward to fighting one of these things. And, you know, this is actually the climax of the trailer, really. Here we finally get Balthazar's face, the big bad guy. We get a little bit more of the Forged and the Hydra attacks. Look at that, the Hydra attacks. More quick cuts with the Forge as we just wind through into the end there, with Balthazar looking out on a barren landscape and the Path of Fire logo. And there you go, that's the trailer. That's the best analysis I can give for you guys. It feels like I was just doing this the other day because they only just put out Living World episode 6 for season 3. Crazy stuff. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit more about the trailer from that. Hopefully there was some interesting information to go alongside that. There is a lot of other media to get through. There's loads of trailers about elite specializations and mounts and so forth, and we will get to those in due course. But there you go. That's my take on Path of Fire. That's my take on what they could be doing with the lore, the sum up of this. We may get one more trailer by the time release comes around. They tend to do like an introductory teaser trailer, like which is this, and then when it launches, they do another one. There's usually a launch trailer of some kind, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing what they do there, because that's not months away, guys. That's like less than a month and a half away. It's bizarre. It's September 22nd all this comes out. I still can't get over that. There you go, guys. That's Path of Fire. Let me know what you think. I'm going to be very eagerly looking at the comments. It feels great to be able to talk about this openly now after I made the decision, perhaps foolishly, to not cover the leaks in the recent months. That could have been a lot of easy viewership for me. But there we go. If you're interested in buying the expansion and you want to support me, please do feel free to use the link I've got in my description. If you click that before making your purchase, it puts some pennies in the pocket. Many thanks, everybody, and I will see you next time. Still a lot to come.
And? The Citadel wanted a report on my faux fire mission and the magic. Who am I to deny them a great tale?
And?
It's classified, Commander. Sorry.